I, 28 years old, female. I'm just getting better after having the flu for the last 5 and 6 days. At my worst, I was able to get up and get water, crackers, etc. But it took a lot out of me. I had a high fever, body aches, and the works. My husband, 28 years old, male, did not want to get sick, which I 100% understand. But I wish he would have taken a bit more care of me, or given me a bit more affection. I guess I want to get an idea of how other couples navigate one person having the flu cold, to see if it's worth a conversation or if the image of how I'd like to be taken care of is unreasonable. For more context, I slept in the living room on the sectional. To add, I prefer sleeping here when sick. This is just an example of physical distance. We've had 0 physical contact in 6 days. We have spent some time together watching TV with me on one side of the sectional and him on the other. But most of the time he's been at work or hanging out in another room. As far as daily chores, he usually cooks and I usually do the dishes. He's cooked pretty much every day since I've been sick, but didn't take over my chore of doing the dishes. So now I'm looking at almost a week's worth of dishes now that I'm starting to feel better. I think I would have liked having him generally check in on me or a "can I fill your water bottle while I'm up" type thing more often. Maybe a forehead kiss when he left for work, and him picking up my slack for chores rather than only doing his duties, so I didn't have to play catch-up now that I feel better. I also would have loved cuddles and probably would have had the mindset of, I'm gonna get sick regardless, might as well be sick together. But I do understand not wanting to do that. What are your thoughts? Is this an unreasonable ask? I already know that my mom 100% babied me whenever I was sick. So I have no idea what is normal, LOL. We've been together 8 years, living together for 3 years, married 5 months. We've been sick together before, but I think it's always been both of us sick at the same time. Not one of us, and the other trying to stay healthy. Now for an update. Appreciate all your responses. I was doing too much overthinking and not enough communicating. My husband did the dishes when he got home from work today without me asking him to. I don't think he had any intention of having me do them. I just assumed the worst. Most of you are very grossed out by a week's worth of dishes, and rightly so. But we've both let dishes pile up more than they should in the past while dealing with mental health, and are a bit desensitized to it, TBH, as gross as that is. This was excessive, and we haven't had a discussion on why they piled up this time. But I plan on talking to him about it. It did cause me a lot of stress that could have been avoided by some simple communication on both sides. As far as other acts of service, I think I made it sound like he's done absolutely nothing for me. That's not the case. But we will talk about what our needs are for when each of us is sick to make sure they are being met. I think we have different expectations, but I'm confident they can be addressed with a simple conversation. And I 100% respect his physical touch boundary. Logically, it makes complete sense, and I would hate to get him sick if it's avoidable. And I'm hopeful that a bit more non-physical affection will make me feel a little more satisfied overall. He truly is an amazing husband and is very receptive to communication. I appreciate all the concern. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I already know that my mom 100% babied me whenever I was sick. So I have no idea what is normal at LOL. Your mom did what most moms do, but he's not your mom. As I was reading, I was thinking you wanted him to mother you, which is not fair. You have expectations for kisses on the forehead and him wanting to share your germs, etc. But this is not who this man is. He has not been this way in your 8 years together. It seems like you want him to be a whole different person. You can mention your wishes, but he is not wrong if he doesn't do them. No one wants a list of expectations for how to behave in different scenarios. They want to just be themselves. He did cook as usual, so enjoy that. I do think he should sleep on the couch while you sleep in the bed. I don't think he should wait on your hand and foot, but that should be his decision. Comment 2. Thinking that he'd do the dishes? Not unreasonable. Expecting physical affection from him? Unreasonable. It sounds like you take misery loves company to a whole nother level and want him to suffer the same fate. I come from a rub some dirt on it and keep moving family. My husband comes from a neglectful family. So we're both kind of hands off when we're sick. Sounds like your husband is the same way, and he treated you the way he likes to be treated. It's okay to want him to pick up the slack, not okay to expect him to share your germs. Now for the update. Thanks for all your comments from the last post. So, after I started feeling better from the flu, things seemed to be getting back to normal. My husband and I had a good talk about our expectations when one of us is sick, and it felt like we were on the same page. But then, some old issues started creeping back in, and it's been a rough couple of weeks. First, I noticed that my husband was spending more time at work than usual. At first, I thought he was just catching up on things he missed while I was sick. But then, I found out that he had been meeting up with an old friend, someone he used to have feelings for. He didn't tell me about these meetings, and I only found out because I saw a message pop up on his phone. When I confronted him, he said it was nothing, and that they were just catching up. But it felt like a betrayal, especially since he didn't mention it to me. This led to a huge argument. I felt like he was hiding things from me, and he felt like I was overreacting. We both said things we didn't mean, and it got pretty heated. He ended up leaving the house to cool off, and I spent the night crying on the sectional. It brought back memories of when we first started dating, and he was still in touch with this friend. Back then, I had to set boundaries because it made me uncomfortable, and he agreed to limit contact. Now it felt like we were back to square one. The next day, he came back, and we tried to talk things out. He apologized for not telling me about meeting his friend, but he insisted that it was innocent. I wanted to believe him, but it was hard. Trust is a tricky thing, and once it's shaken, it takes time to rebuild. We decided to take a step back and give each other some space to think things through. During this time, I started reflecting on our relationship, and some of the patterns that have emerged over the years were, one thing that stood out was how we handle stress. My husband tends to withdraw and focus on work, while I crave more connection and reassurance. This difference has caused friction before, but we've always managed to work through it. This time, though, it felt different. The stakes were higher and the wounds were deeper. A few days later, we had another conversation. This time, it was calmer, and we both tried to listen to each other's perspectives. I told him how much it hurt that he didn't tell me about meeting his friend, and how it made me feel like I couldn't trust him. He explained that he didn't think it was a big deal, and didn't want to worry me while I was recovering. We both acknowledged that we had different ways of dealing with things, and that we needed to find a middle ground. But just as we were starting to make some progress, another issue came up. My husband's job announced that they were going to be laying off some employees, and he was at risk of losing his position. This added a whole new layer of stress to our already strained relationship. He became even more distant, spending long hours at the office and coming home exhausted and irritable. I tried to be supportive, but it was hard when I felt like I was losing him. One night, after another long day at work, he came home and told me that he had been offered a job in another city. It was a great opportunity, but it meant that we would have to move. I was shocked and didn't know how to react. We had just started to rebuild our relationship, and now it felt like everything was being thrown into chaos again. I asked him why he didn't tell me about the job offer sooner, and he said he didn't want to add to my stress. This led to another argument. I felt like he was making decisions without considering me, and he felt like I wasn't being supportive of his career. We both had valid points, but it was hard to see that in the heat of the moment. We ended up going to bed angry, and the next morning, things were still tense. As the days went on, we tried to navigate this new challenge. We talked about the possibility of moving and what it would mean for our relationship. I was torn because I wanted to support him, but I also didn't want to leave behind everything we had built here. It felt like we were at a crossroads, and I didn't know which path to take. In the midst of all this, I started thinking about our past and how we got to this point. I remembered the early days of our relationship when everything was new and exciting. We had so much fun together, and it felt like we could conquer anything. But as time went on, life got more complicated and we faced more challenges. We had our ups and downs, but we always managed to come out stronger. This time, though, it felt different. The issues we were facing were bigger and more complex, and I wasn't sure if we could overcome them. One thing that kept coming up in my mind was how we handle communication. In the past, we've had issues with not being open and honest with each other, and it's caused problems. I realized that we both needed to work on this if we wanted to move forward. I decided to bring it up in our next conversation and see if we could find a way to improve. When we finally sat down to talk, I told him how I was feeling and what I thought we needed to work on. He agreed that communication was a big issue and that we both needed to be more open and honest. We made a plan to check in with each other regularly and make sure we were on the same page. It felt like a step in the right direction, but I knew it would take time and effort to rebuild the trust that had been broken. As we continued to navigate these challenges, I couldn't help but feel a sense of uncertainty about our future. The job offer was still on the table, and we had to make a decision soon. I was torn between wanting to support my husband and wanting to stay in the place we had called home for so long. It felt like no matter what choice we made, there would be consequences. In the end, we decided to take the job offer and move to the new city. It was a difficult decision, but we felt like it was the best option for our future. The move was stressful, and there were moments when I wondered if we had made the right choice. But we tried to stay positive and focus on the opportunities that lay ahead. As we settled into our new home, I couldn't shake the feeling that things were still unresolved. The issues we had faced in the past were still there, and I knew we had a lot of work to do if we wanted to build a strong and healthy relationship. It was a daunting task, but I was determined to give it my all. Thanks for reading. Aita for telling my fiancé to stop attacking me over gender roles. My fiancé, 34 years old, and I, 35 years old, together for 2.5 years, have a lot of friends who have recently had children. One couple was recently discussing how much time breastfeeding takes. 40 minutes every 3 hours, which was a surprise to both of us. On the way home from hanging out with them, I mentioned how I was shocked at how much time it took and how I felt bad about that, and my fiancé said something like, "It's going to be hard to not take out that imbalance on you." I guess for me, I feel like she's already predicting failure. Like, I won't compensate for the breastfeeding labor in some other way or at some other point in raising our children, which frankly feels unfair because I do the slight majority of the housework. She said this multiple times to me. It also frankly makes me feel nervous to have children if she's going to resent me for the 9 months she's pregnant, which she's also said, and then the year she's breastfeeding. She's also made comments like, if someone has to stay home with our children, it's not going to be me, even though I've made it clear through the course of the relationship that I do not want her to stay home and do not think it makes sense logically. She and I both each make more than $200,000 per year, so the income sacrifice wouldn't make sense. This comment feels mildly offensive to me because I, like her, spent a lot of time getting an education and developing my career, and don't feel like it's fair for either of us to stay home, which I wish is what she would articulate. To me, I know that she's really worried about gender imbalances, and I know that couples have to work hard at overcoming them because there are so many structural and societal mechanisms that lead to the woman doing more, but I think it'd be really helpful for her if she said things like, "I'm feeling really anxious about breastfeeding," or "I really don't want to stay at home," instead of things that feel like attacks on me. I mentioned all this to her, unfortunately over text because we're not in the same city right now, and she said she felt even angrier about gender than before. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm missing. I think my request to her is going to be to try to explore her anger about gender a bit more, but just wondering if I am missing something here. To add, I raised this as part of a broader conversation about effort in our relationship, particularly around wedding planning. The context for wedding planning was her parents, who are Pakistani, wanted to have a 5-day wedding and made the decision to have a long, fairly involved wedding. Lots of events, with each event being pretty complicated. I didn't have any discussion about the scope or scale of the event, as this was just something that her parents really wanted. We agreed to hire a wedding planner, but she still has done most of the planning because she likes to have control over decision, timelines, etc. I have stepped in for some stuff, but admittedly haven't done more than 25%. But I've put in other effort, traveling to Pakistan in December to get clothes and spend time with her grandma, going to the wedding city multiple times for several days with lots of in-law time, which is frankly very taxing, etc. I think because I wasn't involved in any of the discussions of the scope of the wedding planning. I don't think it's quite fair to resent me not pitching in 50 to 50%. Anyways, I think because of this recent wedding planning issue, I think she feels like there is a gender dynamic but I don't think it's gender-related so much as how the decision-making process unfolded. So, while I can see there is some fear that might translate from the wedding to child-rearing, I guess I find the more analogous situation to chores or housework, where she has said I put in more labor. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I don't know. To me, it just sounds like she knows herself pretty well and knows that societal expectations, like her staying home with any kids, will absolutely impact her. I'm a partner at a law firm and make way more than my husband, and people still ask me regularly if I'm going to stay home with our kid. They never ask my husband. I don't know if it's just because we had couples counseling before marriage or what, but we were both very open and communicative about trying to avoid resentment and taking that out on each other when we had our kid. There's a huge risk for that. We both knew it. I was so exhausted from pumping and very injured from the birth and giving my body and health to this little screaming potato, and it just wasn't fair. It couldn't be. So we talked about it a lot, and I was honest when I was feeling resentment, and we worked through it. It sounds like she's aware that that's a risk for her and wants to be prepared for that. I don't really see anything wrong with that. Comment 2. I remember when my friend group started having babies. It caused a weird ripple effect through our social circle. Babies are harder than people expect, and having a newborn in the house can really turn any cracks in the relationship into canyons. I remember my friends becoming increasingly exhausted, constantly complaining about the lack of sleep, problems with the in-laws, etc. I remember seeing many, not all, of the men my friends had married just fail at stepping up. Guys you were 100% sure would be great husbands and fathers just check out and bury themselves in work or video games. It was really scary, especially when 3 couples got divorced within a couple of years of having kids. I'm willing to bet that one or more of the young mothers in your group is at the end of her rope, and there's a lot of whispered anger and resentment when the men aren't in the room, and that it's causing your fiancé to rip the rose-colored glasses off about kids. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading my last post. So, a lot has happened in the past 2 weeks. After our last conversation, my fiancé and I decided to take a break from wedding planning and focus on our relationship. We both agreed that the stress was getting to us, and we needed to reconnect. We started by having a long video call where we both aired our grievances. She admitted that her comments about gender roles and breastfeeding were coming from a place of deep-seated anxiety. She's always been fiercely independent, and the idea of being tied down by traditional gender roles terrifies her. I told her that I understood her fears, but felt unfairly targeted by her comments. We agreed to work on better communication. During this break, we decided to visit a couples therapist. It was her idea, and I was initially skeptical, but I agreed. The therapist helped us unpack a lot of our issues. One of the key things that came up was her relationship with her parents. Her mom had always been the primary caregiver, and her dad was often absent due to work. This dynamic left a lasting impression on her, and she's terrified of repeating it. She's also worried that I might not step up when it comes to parenting, despite my assurances. The therapist suggested we try a role reversal exercise for a week. I would take on more of the wedding planning, and she would handle some of my work responsibilities. It was an eye-opener for both of us. I realized how overwhelming the wedding planning was, especially with her parents' high expectations. She, on the other hand, got a taste of my work stress. This exercise helped us appreciate each other's efforts more and brought us closer. But here's where things took an unexpected turn. During one of our therapy sessions, my fiancée revealed that she had been offered a job in another city. She hadn't told me because she was conflicted about it. The job is a significant career move for her, but it would mean postponing the wedding and possibly delaying our plans to start a family. She was scared to bring it up because she didn't want to add more stress to our already strained relationship. I was taken aback, but told her that I supported her career ambitions. We decided to take some time to think about it. Over the next few days, we had several heart-to-heart conversations. I could see how much this job meant to her, and I didn't want to be the reason she turned it down. We discussed the possibility of a long-distance relationship and how we would manage it. It wasn't an easy decision, but we agreed that she should take the job. We would figure out the rest as we went along. The fallout from this decision was immediate. Her parents were not happy about the wedding being postponed. They had already started making arrangements and were deeply disappointed. This led to several heated arguments between my fiancée and her parents. I tried to mediate, but it was clear that this was something they needed to work out on their own. It was tough watching her go through this, but I knew it was necessary for her to stand her ground. On my end, I had to deal with my own set of challenges. My family was also disappointed about the wedding being postponed, and I had to explain our decision to them. They were supportive, but concerned about the long-distance aspect of our relationship. I assured them that we were committed to making it work. As we navigated these changes, I started reflecting on my own upbringing. My parents had a very traditional marriage, and my mom was the primary caregiver. I realized that I had internalized some of these gender roles without even knowing it. This was a wake-up call for me. I needed to be more proactive in challenging these norms and supporting my fiancé in every way possible. One evening, while we were discussing our future, my fiancé shared a story from her childhood. Her mom had given up a promising career to raise her and her siblings. This had always been a sore point for her mom, who often expressed regret. My fiancé vowed never to let that happen to her. The story gave me a deeper understanding of her fears and motivations. It wasn't just about gender roles, it was about not wanting to repeat her mom's sacrifices. We also talked about our future children and how we would share responsibilities. We made a pact to always communicate openly and support each other. We even started reading books on co-parenting and modern family dynamics. It felt good to be proactive and plan for our future together. But before I get into that, there was another twist. Just as we were getting comfortable with our new plans, my fiancé's job offer was suddenly put on hold due to budget cuts at the company. This threw us for a loop. We had just started adjusting to the idea of a long-distance relationship, and now we were back to square one. It was frustrating, but we decided to take it in stride. We would continue with our wedding plans and focus on building our life together. In the end, these 2 weeks have been pretty hard on us of emotions. We've had our ups and downs, but I feel like we've come out stronger. We've learned a lot about each other and ourselves. We're not perfect, but we're committed to making this work. Thanks for reading. Aita for giving my husband an ultimatum to get a job, or I'm leaving with our daughter. My husband, 32-year-old male, and I, 28-year-old female, have been having a lot of issues for the past year. But I stay because we have a 23-month-old daughter, and I would hate to tear her away from her dad. We've been married for 3 years, and this is the worst year we've had, but I really need some unbiased opinions about this situation. Please, I won't get into too much detail about all of our issues, but the gist of it is he became a stay-at-home dad in July 2023 due to leaving his job because he has a back injury from the Army in 2015. So now he can't do any physical labor like construction, previous job. I work from home in tech support, and I make decent money to support a majority of things, but money is getting really tight. I'm also extremely active. I go to the gym, I still plan meals, and I clean much more often than he does for being a stay-at-home dad. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll find a new job after being unemployed for 6 months. Instead, he has been hyper-focused on building his Twitch streaming, which we have fought about many times. He mocks me when I ask him to do simple things like doing the laundry or cleaning the house every day, which typically isn't a huge mess at all. As far as employment, I'll give you an example. I'll look on Indeed and send him a posting, and he'll give me the typical, yeah, I could do DoorDash, but that'll hurt my back driving all day. Or, I can't do an office job because I like to be outdoors. So it's a never-ending cycle of him using his disability as an excuse. He even applied for community college, but then immediately redacted and said, IDK, I'm nervous. I'm not really an education kind of person. I'd much rather be working. This is where I need advice. I want to move back to my hometown, 2 hours up north, and be closer to my family, which means us renting out our house and downsizing into an apartment. So one, I don't always have to drive to see my family. My daughter is their only grandchild, and I want her to be closer to them. Plus, save me miles and gas on the car. 2, we don't have to pay $2,500 for our mortgage, and instead pay about $1,500. 3, he claims he will be able to find a job there, even though the current city we live in is big, and it's not hard to find a job. He thinks me being close to family can help, because they can watch her while him and I work, even though I'm a work-from-home parent. Today we argued about him wanting his gaming set up in the apartment. He has a gaming rig plus 3 27-inch monitors, and I told him if we have an apartment, he can't have his setup in the apartment at all. Utility bills in California are very expensive, and I know him running his setup in an 800 square foot apartment would easily cost us $700 minimum in just utilities on top of $1,500 rent, which is practically close to our mortgage payment, and would entirely defeat the purpose of us trying to save money. He keeps insisting on having it, even though we have consoles he can play on. Also, he breadcrumbs a lot. After huge arguments, he acts better for a short time, then somewhat reverts back to his old habits. He has been better about not causing arguments as much as before, and that's where some guilt comes in, because there's a couple of positive changes he has made, but not drastic. I'm really nervous about what to do. I can sort of afford to take care of my daughter and myself, although I'll be living paycheck to paycheck as a single mom, but I'm worried that us downsizing will bring on more problems. At the end of the day, I know for certain that I want to move back to my hometown, and if we separate, he can figure it out from there. Should I still give him grace and hope that he keeps his word on getting a job once we move? Or do you think it's best that I move just me and my daughter and have him figure it out, separation? FYI, we have discussed separation in the past, so he's well aware of that being a possibility. Is there any chance, that you guys think he will change? Now for an update, we've discussed further about the computer being in the apartment, and his stance still stands that he wants to have his setup in there. He has applied for 3 jobs today, but now he wants to get a more expensive apartment, $300 more a month, to have more space. I told him I'm not spending more than $1,500 so we can pay off our debt faster. And he has asked me about 3 times to explain my math on why we shouldn't get an $1,800 apartment. Almost forgot he does get disability retirement monthly, which is equivalent to $22,000 a year in income, which is helpful. But with bills and expenses for the house, our combined yearly income doesn't support everything we pay for. When he worked construction plus received his retirement, our combined income allowed us to live comfortably within our means. But having a house in California, plus a child requires a combined income of $100,000 plus a year, which now we are nowhere close to making since he stopped working. He has welding certificates and worked as a diesel mechanic in the Army. The Veterans Affairs told him about career rehabilitation recently, and he doesn't want to do it. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I stopped at your 3rd paragraph where you stated he mocks you when you ask him to do laundry. I'm sorry, what? He's a stay-at-home dad? Nope. He's a leech. And a jerk. Stay-at-home parents do chores and plan their chores. Set this loser free, mama. He can't be bothered to fold clothes and mocks you. He needs to get the frick out. Comment 2. I made this comment on another post, but it fits here. Men will teach a woman how to be a single mother, and then be mad at her for doing it without him. Girl, you are a single mother, and your daughter is learning to put up with some nonsense from men watching this. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. So, after our last argument about his gaming setup, I decided to take a more direct approach. I told him that if he wants to keep his gaming rig, he needs to find a way to pay for the extra utility costs himself. He seemed to agree, but I could tell he was just saying it to end the argument. The next day, he spent hours on his computer, supposedly applying for jobs. I checked his browsing history later and found out he was mostly watching Twitch streams and YouTube videos about gaming. This really frustrated me because it felt like he wasn't taking our situation seriously. I decided to take matters into my own hands and started looking for apartments in my hometown. I found a couple of places within our budget and even scheduled a few viewings. When I told him about it, he seemed indifferent at first, but then started complaining about how he wouldn't have enough space for his gaming setup. I reminded him that our priority should be saving money and being closer to family, not his gaming. A few days later, I made a mistake that changed everything. I was so fed up with his lack of effort that I decided to give him an ultimatum. Either he finds a job within the next 2 weeks, or I'm moving back to my hometown with our daughter. I thought this would motivate him, but instead it backfired. He got really defensive and accused me of not supporting him. He even said that I was trying to control his life and that he felt like he was losing his identity. This led to a huge argument where he brought up things from the past that I thought we had moved on from. He mentioned how he felt emasculated because I was the breadwinner and how he felt like a failure for not being able to provide for his family. I realized that his gaming was his way of coping with these feelings, but it didn't make it any easier to deal with. The next day, he surprised me by actually going out and applying for jobs in person. He even had an interview lined up for a part-time position at a local hardware store. I was cautiously optimistic, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was only doing this because of the ultimatum. I started to feel guilty for pushing him so hard, but I knew that something had to change. Meanwhile, I went ahead with the apartment viewings. I found a place that was perfect for us, affordable, close to my family, and in a good neighborhood. I put down a deposit and started making plans to move. When I told him about it, he seemed resigned but didn't put up much of a fight. I think he realized that I was serious about moving and that he needed to step up. A few days later, he got a call back from the hardware store and was offered the job. It wasn't much, but it was a start. He seemed genuinely excited and even started talking about how he could work his way up to a full-time position. I was relieved, but still wary. I knew that this was just the beginning and that we had a long way to go. As we started packing up the house, I found an old photo album from when we first got married. Looking through the pictures, I was reminded of how happy we used to be and how much we had changed. I realized that a lot of our issues stemmed from unspoken resentments and unmet expectations. We had both changed so much since becoming parents, and we hadn't really taken the time to adjust to our new roles. One picture in particular stood out to me. It was from our honeymoon, and we were both smiling and looking genuinely happy. I remembered how we used to dream about our future together, and how we had so many plans. It made me sad to think about how far we had drifted apart, but it also gave me hope that we could find our way back to each other. As we settled into the new apartment, things started to improve. He was doing well at his new job and even started helping out more around the house. We had a few arguments here and there, but they were nothing compared to what we used to have. I think the move was a wake-up call for both of us, and we started to communicate better and be more supportive of each other. One night, after putting our daughter to bed, we sat down and had a long talk about our future. We both admitted that we had made mistakes and that we needed to work on our relationship. He promised to take his job seriously and to be more involved in our family life. I promised to be more understanding and to support him in finding a balance between work and his hobbies. We also talked about our past and how we had both been carrying around a lot of baggage. He opened up about his feelings of inadequacy and how he felt like he had lost his sense of purpose after leaving the army. I shared my fears about being a single mom and how I felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of providing for our family. It was a difficult conversation, but it was also cathartic. As we move forward, I know that things won't be perfect, but I feel more hopeful than I have in a long time. We're both committed to making our relationship work and to being the best parents we can be for our daughter. It's going to take time and effort, but I believe that we can get through this together. Thank you for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.